To destroy the evil in the single the Transformers.
Well, hello there. Fancy seeing you in the inner space. Because you know what it's time for. It's the Transformers video. It's a video about Transformers. That's what all this is. So you might be wondering, what am I doing here on my floor? I have no good filming space. That is why I am on the floor. What I'm here to talk about today, gender. That's why the joke was that I underlined the trans part in the Transformers because it was going to be about gender and also Transformers that are trans. So they're like Transformers, which I think is super sick, but also makes absolutely no sense. And I wanted to make a video talking about how the gender in Transformers makes absolutely no sense, while also analyzing different characters and also looking into the history of Transformers, and hopefully we can all have a fun time in the gender space together when talking about these guys. And it's probably going to be way too long, and I hope it's funny, but if it isn't, I'm sorry. How to begin with Transformers? Just so everyone's aware, I'm going to be talking mostly about American Transformers cartoons because that's what I have more familiarity with. If there's any cool deets that I'm missing, feel free to drop them in the comments because I'm not an encyclopedia. I'm looking at you, Chris McFeely. Damn, your brain is huge. Transformers originated from a Japanese company, Takara Tomy, which had two toy lines, Diaclone and Micro Machines. Both of these toys were very similar to what Transformers came to be. They were cool action figures that could turn into different cars and trucks and all sorts of other things. American company Hasbro, you may have heard of them, wanted to have the successful toys reach American audiences, but go the extra mile of making a whole cartoon out of them. Nice. I love advertising. And so, with Transformers making its way to the United States and Hasbro reigniting them, creating a fun and funky animated franchise, Transformers was born. And we're still talking about it to this day. I mean, geez, it's almost too much. And don't even get started on how many toys there are. Oh, that's a lot of plastic. I hope we never regret how much plastic we use on all of our action figures. Every character is just a one-sentence description. You have hot-headed cliff jumper. Strike first, strike fast, and strike hard. Oh yeah, cliff jumper. Strike hard.
Come to Papa. Not so fast, Papa.
Also, our favorite, Starscream, who considers himself the most sophisticated and handsome of the Decepticons. Generation 1 wasn't super sophisticated by writing standards. However, it was good enough to entertain kids, which was the main purpose of the series. And also a great way for them to convince their parents that they need to buy these hunks of plastic. What I'm more interested in talking about in this video specifically is how gender exists in the Transformers universe. How does the series justify the difference between characters like this and characters like this? It might be too far away, so I might just have to put an image in there. Oh, Windblade, why? Can Transformers make Babby? Now this is a good question. It's very complicated. There's a lot of workarounds that people have made throughout the life cycle of Transformers in order to explain how more Transformers actually get made. There's factory lines, glowing orbs, mitosis? Seriously, I have no idea what's happening here. But the idea that became very popular was the matrix of leadership and having a primal program to create new life. This originates from the brain of Marvel Comics writer Bob Budiansky and it was a result of a no-girl/no-gender policy enforced by Hasbro at the time. The Creation Matrix has a program that's housed within the Autobot leader that could bring new Transformers to life, which is also very helpful in order to create new characters to sell toys of. Boys don't want to play with girl toys, they want to play with their muscular robot men. So this means that Optimus Prime can get pregnant. Think about that next time you're browsing DeviantArt. The show didn't include any female characters until 1985, and this started with their big feature-length movie, which killed off a lot of old characters, aka toys, to make way for new characters, aka toys, that they wanted to sell for the new line of products. This ushered in characters such as RC, and later, Moonracer, Alita 1, Chromia, Firestar. There are very few female characters left because gender as a concept was becoming extinct, whereas all the he-him robots just didn't have gender anymore. It's not really explained why gender became extinct in the 1980s cartoon, probably just as a way to explain why there were so few female characters. In recent years, there's been some more body diversity within female Transformers. For instance, characters like Strongarm, Nickel, Lug, all of them have sort of atypical body types for female characters. Older Transformers, though, that is not the case. Most female characters have very stereotypically feminine bodies, usually shorter stature, skinnier, more of an emphasized waist, and of course, how can we forget the robot Uniboob, which is also very popular with male characters as well. All of this leads to characters that look a particular way because that's what artists and writers think women look like, and that's why they look that way. Which, if you think about it, if they were made by Quintessons to be an extremely uniform workforce, serving different purposes based on their alt modes, creating specific genders and modifying their bodies in a way that isn't necessarily more functional, but is more physically appealing and a means of expression, would be pretty revolutionary. Fighting against an oppressive regime because they're expressing themselves in this way. But it doesn't really make sense to why that would die out when you think about how Transformers would just inherently get more radical. People like the Decepticons, which literally want to reinvent their entire government and throw everything out and do a different thing. So you think that there would be a lot of female robots in there that use she, her pronouns. It's not the case, so I love this truck, but what if? Oh yeah. So Beast Wars was the second Transformers series, and if you think that's insane, it is, because they went from a 2D robot boy men that are on Earth partying to a fully CGI, weird, long-form plot series who turn into animals. In Beast Wars, there are things called protoforms. Before they get their alt mode or their regular physical appearance, they just appear as this kind of liquid mercury humanoid form that then I'm sorry, Megatron, that was rude. That then takes form of whatever its alt mode likes to be based on its soul. One of the characters, Tarantulas, he wants to create a sexy spider wife. So he takes a protoform and he forces it to scan a spider, and she is massive bazongas. A Black Widow spider that has big tits. I don't know. It's not really that deep. But I like to think it is. I'm on a roll, baby. Given a feminine demeanor, subservient to Megatron. And there's scenes where he's dancing and showing off, where it shows his fantasies of ruling the Decepticons. A lot of Transformers fans took that clip and then played it over Hips Don't Lie. I didn't only just see it as, oh, he's funny, he's dancing, but also I'm going to associate him with songs by women about female experiences. This isn't really an argument, I just thought that was interesting. I'm not really saying anything. most of the IDW comics are rated 18 plus. Because when I think of 18 plus comics, I think there's gonna be pornography in there. But no, it's just because they're that graphic and fucked up. So, RC... Sorry, I was just bracing myself to talk about this. RC is... She has a scientist named Jahaxis, another robot. Transformer. Why am I saying robot? Forces her to become a female transformer because gender became extinct on Cybertron and he wants to bring gender back. She gets loaded up with like the gender juice and she has surgery and then she has a different body now and she is so angry about it and vows to kill that guy. And you might be thinking, that's really bad. It is. It's really bad, which is also why I think most writers for IDW after this comic came out mentally retconned that entire story. So I realized after I made this bit, I went back and I did some more research because I legitimately haven't read this comic in a long time because I hated it so much. And it turns out that they did retcon all of this. RC was Galvatron's sister, who, when they were gladiators way back in the day, she never felt content with her original identity as being a male transformer. So she transitioned with the help of Jahaxis, who was just a bad doctor, so that just left her traumatized, which is valid, but it's also like, they still use the same comic, like it's still part of their plot, and after she goes on a killing rampage, she gets put into turbo prison and her spark gets ripped out, and it says that she found peace after her spark was separated from her body, as if to say, trans people will only find peace when they're dead. So that's all really, really bad. I still hate this. This implies that gender exists chemically and physically within Transformers themselves, which is kind of weird and doesn't make a lot of sense compared to other things we've seen before this. It's just bad. At the end of the day, if you have a transphobe writing things about gender, it's gonna be messed up, and I wouldn't necessarily say that's indicative of the entire series. So, also in the IDW comics are colonies, so Transformers don't only live on the planet of Cybertron. There used to be, and there still are, all these colonies that are spread out across the galaxy. When these colonies start coming back and interacting with Cybertron again, there's a lot more female characters on many of these colonies, which implies that Transformers might have predominantly been female using she, her, and presenting in a particular way. It would make sense that gender, like how it's described in G1, would slowly die off as a concept in Transformers culture on Cybertron due to the functionalist society they were living in. Self-expression and identity was way less important compared to functionalist doctrine. We have alt-based roles instead of gender-based roles. But this allegory has also been used for race, and I don't want to take away from that kind of interpretation. So I want to say that's also extremely valid. Functionalist society in Transformers was a government body based upon the ideology that all Transformers should fulfill what their specific alt mode is, and they should not try to go beyond that. A character like Megatron, who was a miner, should remain a miner. A character that's a scientist, someone who is like Perceptor that turns into a literal microscope, they should just keep doing science stuff, because that is what God, Primus, has dictated for their body to be. Transness can be seen similarly, as instead of going along with pre-designated roles for men and women, trans people often go beyond and as such can have revolutionary identities. A Node and Lug are characters that are introduced later in the IDW Transformers series. A character that they used to know talks to both of them and says he when referring to both of the characters. Lug interrupts them and says she says, not he, not anymore. The other character's kind of confused because it's not normal in their society to change their pronouns. It's seen as something that's irrelevant, so they don't consider the fact that people could change those things. A Node says, Lug's a she now, me too. Why? It's just a better fit. The further you get from Cybertron, the more people you meet, the more you realize that as a race, we've been limiting ourselves unnecessarily. You know, before the war, the Primal Vanguard used to come home between campaigns. There would always be a few that reclassified themselves. A few she's amongst the he's. They tended to stick together. He to she. I didn't understand the significance. What difference did it make? But after we left Cybertron and started to meet so many other races, yeah, then it made sense. It made perfect sense. So is that why you changed your look? Yep, new shape, new me. In these panels, we get a very succinct look at what transitioning, or reclassifying as she says, means to her. For her, it's simply getting a broader perspective on the world and realizing that some things fit better than others. There isn't a clear, objective reasoning for why she would choose she over he. It's more human in a way. It reflects the fact that for a lot of trans people, we don't have a reason why we necessarily are trans. It's just something that comes up as we interact with more people in the world, and we realize we prefer and feel like one thing over another. So by not explaining very much, it's a lot easier to process how this would work in their society, rather than thinking too hard about why a transformer would see a distinction between he and she as pronouns. Because it's so straightforward, it's kind of nice, especially compared to the transness that's seen before this with RC, which is way more violent and very transphobic in the way that it presents how trans people exist in the world. It's really hard to talk about the kind of dysphoria a transformer would experience, because they can change their body. But when it comes to forged versus constructed cold, that dysphoria feels a lot more obvious. Being forged means that a Transformers character was found naturally on the surface of a planet or moon or other satellite as a result of stellar activity, creating balls of energy that then create living metal around themselves and then grow like a real, regular person around this orb of life. Cold construction involves artificially creating a spark and artificially constructing a body for that spark to go into. A good example is Starscream. Him and the Seekers are all constructed cold, which is also why they all look the same, which is an excuse. They use the same character design for like 50 million characters. For Starscream, in this panel right here, he envisions what he could be if he was forged. Instead of being a robot that is identical to millions and millions of other brothers, Starscream could have a completely unique, to his own form that reflects his soul. And Windblade says, "Hello, it's nice to finally meet you," as if to say, this is what you should have been and what your body could have been, and it's great to see the real you. Which is kind of yikes, because that doesn't help Starscream, because Starscream isn't forged, and it's kind of despicable to imply that it's great to see this version of him that doesn't actually exist. However, with Starscream, it's a really good example. He is constantly changing his physical appearance and his paint jobs and his body type, all these different things, both because they make different toys that sell and all that kind of stuff, but also because he does not like himself. Starscream has this self-loathing that comes out in a way that is very reminiscent of gender dysphoria. He only can see himself through the lens of others and what he thinks other people will like more, which is extremely troubling and very sad. He wants to stand out from all the other Seekers, and it causes him a lot of distress, enough that he spends so much time picking out new parts to integrate into his body. Constructed Coldbots were created by both Autobots and Decepticons in order to make up for the fact that everyone was dying because of their massive fucking war. This is where you get such fantastic alt modes as Leg, Bomb. You made a bomb, you made it a person that can think and feel, and all he can do is die. Because their spark can't dictate necessarily how their body grows, and they are controlled by a corporation or government body. Within this context, we can imagine characters that are constructed cold becoming dysphoric or envious of other characters because they don't necessarily feel congruency between their spark and their body and their alt mode. This is also combined with the discrimination against constructed cold individuals on Cybertron, where they're referred to as being lesser, less intelligent, often have more dangerous jobs, and are otherwise considered disposable. That emphasizes the fact that they aren't considered like people. Similarly to how human beings perform different genders, Transformers are forced to perform their different alt modes, because based on their alt mode, they have different ways of existing within their society. Fantastic! Now we can finally identify as attack helicopters! Round of applause. So forged characters are considered being more complete and authentic, whereas constructed cold characters are shown as having discontent with their being. At the end of the day, gender is really just like what a node says. It just is, it just feels right, and I could talk about gender all day, and many people do, but sometimes it doesn't need to be explained. Gender can just be. So yeah, did I just write this massive video in order to say that gender in Transformers is an overcomplicated mess that can be effortlessly pushed aside to say it just feels right? Yeah, join me next time when I argue that Transformers has always been gay and the Decepticons were right.